Дамы и господа.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to our session at the Moscow Urban Forum. So before we start this session today, I was actually asked to announce that we're going to have an interactive poll for everybody. Could you please download the app so that you can have a part in the interactive vote? We will have it all displayed on the screen in real time. So please do install the app right now. There you go. Esports in the metropolis. What kind of policies should city administrators adopt? So please cast your vote. What is the name of the app? I think it would be useful for us to remind everybody. Let's make it easier for everyone. So the app is called Moscow Urban Forum 2018. Open the app. Find our session. You can just find the name of the session. And then you will have a survey button there, or a poll. So please cast your vote. And while you're voting, let me introduce myself. I'm Alexandr Timofeev. I'm an esports commentator. I used to be a professional esports player. Many of you have already seen me at different events, but I will be with you until the end of the session, whether you want it or not, but I'm afraid I have no choice. So I can see that the image on the screen is changing, so in a couple of minutes, we will have finished our poll. We'll see what is your highest priority. E-sports at a stadium, new athletic formats. As you can guess, we will be discussing esports, the development of esports, but we will talk about it a bit later. So let's look at the results. I see 0%. As you can see, great minds think alike. By the way, we will not have Igor Zak with us today. Instead of Mr. Zak, we will have Mark Averbuk. He's over there. He will be one of the speakers today. And fortunately, Mark is with us today. Unfortunately, Igor wasn't able to come. I do apologize for the unfortunate wording, but I do hope you understood me. We are very happy for Mark to be with us. He is very well known. Oh, by the way, look, some people actually managed to change their opinion. And you can see we have to actively promote esports as a type of sport. So we can finish our voting. Thank you very much for everybody who took part. And let me introduce our speakers. Mark, thank you very much for joining us today. Artur Gaziev, head of the Department of Computer and Visual Technologies in the eMoscow company. Yaroslav Mishalkin, Strategy Communications Director in as force holding. Oh, yeah, hey, give them a hand, guys. Give them a hand. They're well-known people. And Yevgeny Olenev, founder of Electronic Mushroom. Please join us here. And that's not all. Oh, Mark, you're already here. Fantastic. That's great. Hans Jagnov, president of the German Esports Federation. So today we are here to discuss a number of interesting points. But then again, looking at the topic of our discussion today, I think you have already guessed what we'll be talking about. So right now, esports is developing at a tremendous pace, and Russia here is one of the leaders, surprising as it may sound. So today, esports competitions or esports games, they are extremely popular. They gather whole stadiums, and they can even start competing with traditional sports. So today we will talk about the prospects of esports development. We will talk about economic growth trends. We will talk about near-term prospects, and so we will talk about the impact of esports on economic and social aspects. So our first speaker will be Yaroslav Mishalkin, head for strategic communication. But before we give it over to you, Yaroslav, I remembered an important thing I wanted to ask all of the delegates. How do you think the development of sports, how will it influence urban infrastructure? Will it be more favorable for members of the business community, for the citizens, or for advertisers? So could you please think about it for 1 or 2 minutes and give us your answer? Thank you.
Okay, let's not wait for too long. And all right. Well, first and foremost, e-sport development will do good for the e-sportsmen or gamers, those gamers who aspire to become e-sportsmen. We think that normal gamers, they live in cities, and we build teams, then we promote these teams to a professional level, and only after that, businessmen kick in, advertisers kick in. First and foremost, it is about creating value for the players or gamers. Okay, excellent point of view. Thanks for the answer. Yaroslav, we started with you, and I think it will have a positive effect on everyone. Advertisers will get access to a bigger audience. City dwellers will get another entertainment, and business. Who else was there? I think that businessmen fall into the same category with advertisers. Okay, thank you very much. You, Mark, what would you say as a person who recently joined us? Okay, I completely agree with my colleagues. I mean, I don't think there is a clear-cut answer here. So every group stands to get its benefits. So starting with the gamers, I would say that esports is a young entertainment, but it originated in the mid-90s, and it traces its origin back to the players. The more gamers we have, the more vibrant esports becomes. And Arthur was right in saying that we need to focus on the gamers first, and then they will bring in the rest of the business. Okay, thank you very much for the answer. Hans, what is your take on this matter?
Well, I think the the players are most important. Esports is all about community and especially about online community. And I think that is a very interesting point to take into an infrastructural discussion, to find something that you can build up with infrastructure that closes a gap between online and offline engagement of players. And I think that should be some point of view that you put in the center of infrastructural discussions to bring esports into city life and to also socially integrate it into city lives.
Спасибо большое за ответ. Это был, наверное, самый развернутый, самый...
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. It was probably the most detailed answer till now. And thanks again for taking your time to come here. Hans is the president of the German Esports Federation. He arrived to us with good news. And the last but not least of our speakers is Evgeny Olenev, the creator of Electronic Mushroom. Could you please answer the question? Hello to you all. And I agree with the previous speakers. I think that here we have a win-win situation, so everyone benefits from esports development. And I agree that we should focus on the gamers, on those people who will be promoting and developing this industry. Thank you very much for the answer. So we have now we have opinions from all of our speakers, and they, let's say, they think the same about the prospects of this business. But let's talk in a more detailed way about it. And Yaroslav, I would like to invite you to tell us about what your holding company is doing. Your holding company covers a large variety of different areas, starting with building esports team and finishing with operating an esports arena. So, can you please outline the future of the offline segment of esports? And is there a chance? Is there any chance for? Is there any chance for Russia hosting an esports cup here and accepting and hosting the same number of tourists as was the case during the football cup? You mean all gamers in all disciplines? No, probably in just one of them. In order for us to feel the aura of esports, I would like to play a brief video, and Mark would be delighted to see it.
Сейчас в этом деньги крутятся.
So thank you for the video. And this is generally it. That's the esports in its brightest form. That was the video showing the final of the epicenter tournament, and so the final which took place in Moscow, and the prize was $1 million. I'd like to make a brief introduction about esports. I was always fascinated by this industry because it's a unique business. It's on the seam of a number of areas. It's classical sports, it's entertainment business, and it's media business, a giant piece of it. And talking about entertainment and media business, if we take a look at the classical sports now, then we'll see that in terms of the biggest, but the sports which managed to be the most, let's say, spectacular, enjoys the highest advertising budgets. And esports is far ahead of all other sports. And the growth of this industry, which is 20% year on year, is very high. The volume of the market is estimated at 1 billion now, but this is a very downplayed estimate, so I think it is 10. So there is a great audience which is fostering development of this industry, and there is a number of specialized agencies which rate these these areas, and Goldman Sachs and Banks of America make an estimate of the number of subscribers, and the number of subscribers keeps growing, and it will become bigger than the number of spectators at the largest sports events in the United States. So the video that you have seen was filmed in the Ice Hockey Palace, and more than 20 million people were viewing these competitions online. Let's take a look at what's happening in the world. The town of Arlington in the state of Texas, there were two places of interest there: the highest merry-go-round in the world and the largest stadium in that area for 80,000 people. Now they're building the biggest esports arena and aspiring to become an epicenter of esports in the United States of America, and not only in the USA, but all the esports center of the entire world, and they want to host all the key esports events, and the city administration and the mayor are supporting this project. Let's take a look at what's happening in China. I'm not so fluent in Chinese, so I would prefer to stick with the English names of these cities, but this is a very interesting precedent. Originally, the Chinese wanted to build an environmentally friendly city, an eco-city. A very trendy topic now. They failed to do it, but they managed to transform this project into an esports center. Now they have a giant esports complex there, and it is supported by the federal government. The Ministry of Sports is overlooking these activities, and there is an esports department in the Chinese Ministry of Sports. It is interesting to take a look at how they resolve the problem of esports arenas. And the problem is this: normally, you don't have enough content to have good utilization rate for these arenas. I mean, not often you will have large tournaments which will collect a big number of spectators. So you need to have a very good idea how you're planning to use these facilities in the meantime. You can use it as an office space, as a space for education, as a demonstrational space or entertainment space. It's a very worthy approach, which was copied in Moscow, in a way, when our holding opened the largest esports arena, which is called Yota Arena, and this is where we host the finals of the largest official e-tournaments in Russia. And so we have a stage there where the tournament takes place. We have a karaoke bar, we have an esports shop, a computer club, and so it's regardless of whether you have a tournament underway now or not, this facility is paying for itself. And it says computer club here. Actually, we see some computer clubs are on the rise. Remember, some 15 years ago, we went to a computer club which were located somewhere in the basement of buildings, and we played Quake or Counter-Strike there. But I invite you to come to our place and take a look yourself. And this space is designed for, let's say, presentations and for hosting entertainment events. This is a project which is fully in line with all world trends and standards. And let's take a look whether this business, I mean, building these esports facilities, have a future, and how these esports facilities contribute to urban environment. I think it's a worthy business, and Mr. Chang Wu agrees with me completely, and this is the vice president of one of the largest tech corporations in the world. And they have put their money where the mouth is, having invested $15 billion in Cybersport already. And Mr. Wu's point is this, and I completely agree with you. Sports is a hallmark, becomes a hallmark of cities, and esports will play the same role. But I would like to finally answer your question, whether Russia or Moscow is capable of becoming the center of world esports. I think it certainly can, as all conditions are there. Thank you very much. And it was the Strategic Communications Director from ES Force Holding, Yaroslav Mishalkin. Thank you very much for a very elaborate answer. And now I'd like to give the floor to Hans Jagnov, who will tell us about how, since we have our discussion in the international context, how the esports can affect the tourist traffic. So those tourists who will be visiting these events in an offline segment, and how will that, which implications esports has for the social and economic aspects of the city life. And also, cybersport is associated mostly with online events, whereas in this case, so the question is more about the offline segment. What impact does that have upon the city dwellers and the city itself?
So, well, I think sports in general is an international tourism business. So you have big sports events, and that brings international tourism to your city. So esports is the same. From our point of view, esports is sports. I think that might in Russia it might not be a topic anymore that much, but in Germany it still is. And therefore we analyze esports on a sports perspective. So we had 2 weeks ago the ESL1 Cologne in Cologne, the Cathedral of Counter-Strike, as he called it, and it drove 15,000 people from 62 nations to the city of Cologne, which means we had 62 nations represented, not only at the stadium where the event was hosted, but also all around the cities. So you had, like in every major sports event, and your city just recently experienced that, you had all hotels booked to the max. And it was also integrating into a cultural life of the city itself. So you not only had at the event, and I find that very interesting that you created, and you just talked about it, that you created like an esports ecosystem into your event space. And I think that's what every event should do to close the gap between offline and online community. And but it also reached out to the city itself. So you wandered through the city, you got into a pub or a bar, and you would see someone wearing a shirt from their favorite team. And everywhere you went, we tried to get out of there to get our heads a little bit cleared from the ESPD. And we tried to find a space where we could just relax. And there were people sitting in Counter-Strike shirts and team shirts, and it was just amazing to see how it integrated into cultural life of the city itself. And I think that is something you should be aware of if you are planning to bringing esports into your city, that you bring a young and a very flexible group of audience into your city that is very interesting in communicating with the city itself, and to have the event branded Cathedral of Counter-Strike. It's clear. It's a reference to the city's most precious symbol, the cathedral, the Cologne Cathedral, and that creates a bond between the city that is hosting the event and the audience and the event itself. And I think that's very important to recognize when you are thinking about how to structurally bring this up into an urban region, and to connect it to that overall strategy I might have to promote my city. And I think that's very important.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much for your answer. It was very interesting and very detailed, and I think it is absolutely astounding when the whole city becomes involved, becomes part of such a fantastic event. We do hope that esports will become as popular in Russia as it is in Germany. We really do hope to see the day, and I hope that players will become very well known, something that is similar to football World Cup. You know, this is something that we would like to see. So thank you very much for your answer. And right now I would like to give the floor to Mark Averbuch. So please tell us, what is esports and what sort of trends are you expecting in the near future? What do you think esports will become? And what will be the vector of its development? How do you see it? Thank you very much. You know, it's not a secret that more mobile technologies have been conquering the world, and I believe that esports will transfer to mobile platforms maybe in the next 5, 7, 10 years. Such games as international or other games will remain what they are, but I think that a lot of tournaments such as E-League or ESL, I believe that these tournaments, unfortunately, will start function in the new esports paradigm. Or actually, no, they will not be able to function in this new paradigm. If you look at the Riot games, so basically redirected all of the financial flows or infrastructure. If you look at this, you will probably agree that in the future, publishers will not be interested in seeing independent players on the markets. And this is maybe a bit this is maybe a scary prospect, but I believe that publishers will actually determine the policy of how their games should develop in the future. And once it all transfers into mobile platforms, that will actually increase the penetration of esports into the society. You know, the previous leap was directed to streaming platforms. You know, streaming platforms, adjusting TV and so on and so forth, they existed before, but they gained widespread popularity thanks to esports. And I think that the next stage of development of this industry will be mobile esports, when actually you don't need to be tied to your computer. You do not need to have high-speed internet access. Maybe you'll be sitting on the beach, which would be ideal, so you can, you know, play whatever game you choose, a game which will be adapted to mobile screens. It will be adapted for mobile esports. And actually, I published it recently in my blog. I said that as soon as these games will emerge, games that target mobile platforms, because, you know, the majority of our games are not that yet. So as soon as we see more competition, more sort of human against human format, when people start competing not just for a victory, but they have tangible prizes, for instance, to take part in the final, which, let's say, will happen every few years. When you see right now, if you look at Counter-Strike tournament calendar, everything is booked, you know, for the 2019. So I believe in this case, the number of people who take interest in esports will be on the rise. You know, we started with this. We said, how do we develop esports? I think esports should be developed through involvement of players. The more players we have, the more people will compete, not just through playing, but they will compete in tournaments, even if it is amateur tournaments. And the more people we have, the faster esports will grow, the more impressive statistics we'll have, the more, the wider the audience will become. So basically, it will expand our field. Mark, if you'd allow me, I wanted to ask you a question. You're talking about the future, and the future for you is in mobile games. Do you have any ideas how we can integrate it right now? Well, you know, back in the day, we used to think that games have no relation to sport. So what about mobile platforms? Well, you know, I didn't quite understand your question when you say integrating it. Integrating it where? Well, let's say television. I don't think esports right now, I don't think it needs television. Maybe that time was 10 or 15 years ago, when we were developing esports in Russia or in Germany or in whatever country. Back in the time, we believed that the only way forward for esports was to gain access to television. Television wasn't really interested in us back at the time. Of course, we made a number of attempts to approach them. We held tournaments or leagues that would be suitable for TV formats, but nothing came out of it. But now, when you have, you know, a stream, we can access anywhere. You don't need the TV for this. Again, why do we need television? If we're talking about, well, the Twitch you mentioned, right? Right now, it is not so popular, and it's, you know, when it comes to mobile gaming. Well, just imagine this situation. Imagine 2028, right? You have a mobile phone. You're on the beach. I have a mobile phone. Unfortunately, I'm in Moscow. You're lucky. I'm not so lucky. And we have a tournament. So we are playing using our phones. The image is stretched. It goes to a publisher. Then it gets repackaged, and it gets transferred to viewers who consume the end product, the final product, without the participation of tournament operators or with no participation from production teams. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that if we look at other fields right now, at other areas, and we see that A lot of the work is done by IE. And I think the same will be in the near future. Esports is the most high-tech type of sport. So I think that esports is first and foremost about technologies, and maybe we can remove the human component out of it entirely. Thank you very much for your answer. Well, first of all, I wanted to address all of our speakers, to discuss this issue with all of our speakers. So but Hans wanted to speak. So I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
Thank you. And let's make it a little bit interesting. I totally agree with you that we will see an esports future in mobile. And we will see that it connects to other technologies as augmented reality, maybe virtual reality, and this will be mobile as well. And also it will integrate into our physical world, where we find sports engagements with mobile support, or mobile playing with sports support. So I think we have a lot of pathways going into the future, and we will see which one will play out the best. But I don't think that traditional esports, and it's very funny to say that after only 20 years in esports history, in like how we know it today, that traditional esports will drown on that, because we are just in a situation where major players, you might saw the news where ESPN and Disney Channel and I think NBC agreed on broadcasting the Overwatch League. So we are having, on the one hand, we are having Twitch and YouTube and all the streaming formats, and we have on the other end the traditional TV stations broadcasting esports. And that all leads to one point. Sports have to be communicated. It's not only about playing, but it's also about creating a system around it to make it approachable, even if you are not playing right now. So, and you might be knowing this as a commentary, and I think it's very important to not only bring esports into our game and into that what we play, but also into our into our leisure time to just have like relaxing watching sports, and not only playing sports but watching sports as a part of a well-functioning system. I can't imagine that having that only mobile, having that only without any commentary, without any in the maybe in the amateur field. That might be true, and I think we see that happening right now with a lot of games emerging in the mobile sector. But to have it broadcasted, to have like the magic that comes out of a big tournament on the pro sports approach to esports, I think that we will see for a long time in esports and traditional esports, and we should be focusing on finding a point how to make mobile and how to make all other technologies approachable by that as well.
Thank you very much for your input. And I think that leads to a discussion with all of the speakers, maybe our audience. I'll give you a chance to speak a little bit later, Mark. Let's give an opportunity to other people to speak. I think we touched upon an interesting topic, that it would be complicated to realize mobile sports as type of a professional sports. Now my question is, what can be done here and how should we promote it? Maybe we can choose a certain genre, maybe this is like a card game, a MOBA. Maybe we can select a certain genre to realize it. So yeah, Evgeny, over to you. Yeah, I heard how Mark set the whole topic on fire. So now we have artificial intelligence. We talked about TV. We talked about mobile gaming. In my opinion, and I've worked in industry for a long time as a part of the publishing team, but I think that we will reach the point where graphics will become extremely close to reality, and these graphics will be displayed by mobile devices. So the issue is the interface. How are we going to manage it? How are we going to operate it? This is something that we can't fully imagine just yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen in 5 years or the worst case scenario in 10 years. If we talk about TV and why TV is needed for esports, is because all of the advertisers pay 80% of their budgets to TV. And I believe that's why we need television. I agree with Mark here. That's when we talk about esports. Of course, esports exists without television, and it doesn't really make a big difference there. But the money is in television. So if we start talking about genres, well, I think that whatever we choose can work. Right now we're working with computers, right, with desktop computers, and I think the mobile devices will reach the same level in, let's say, several years, and then you can play whatever game you want on a small device, and it will probably outperform the computers, desktop computers that we have today. If we're talking about mobile phones that we have today, they are as powerful as a desktop computer used to be 5 years ago. Well, yeah. Yeah, 5 years ago, remember we had this sort of flip-out phones. No, that was 10 years ago, not 5. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, Mark, yes, you really wanted to. Yes. I just wanted to reply to Hans by saying that I don't really believe that the tournaments that we have today, a local stadium-based tournament, will die out. I don't believe in that. I will think that they will become a cherry on top. Say, if today we have, say, from 20 to 40 large-scale tournaments, but then locally on large stadiums, let's say in Shanghai in 2017, they had 4 tournaments. In Moscow, we also had a number of tournaments. And I believe that in the future, these tournaments will not be organized quite as often. Look at the World Cup. It's organized every 4 years. And when it comes to our tournaments, let's say in DOT, we have it once every month. And that's not right when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to attracting new audiences. And it's also not right to have it that often, but if we want to influence our audience. Today, they have a match, Team A playing against Team B. In 2 days, it's again Team A against Team B. 3 days later, it's the same thing. So this is not the right approach. And I believe that these tournaments organized by East Force or eSales, where I also started out, I think that these tournaments should become a point of attraction, something that draws people in, something that people have to work on, like people really work on getting, to World Cup, like the players, the team. So we have to adopt this model. So I agree with Hans that when we talk about these sports, that this type of sports will not disappear, but I believe that mobile games will become the majority of sports, and maybe this whole segment of these big tournaments will shrink down to 15-20%, but it will become like a premium product. So right now, eSports or eSale or eLeague tournaments, they do make good products right now, but I think that these products will become premium products simply because they will be organized less frequently, and that will give us a possibility to organize them even better. For instance, Epicenter, right? We worked on it for 2 months. So basically, when we realize that we cannot make an AA decision because we just have no time. Everything has to be done urgently. So I agree with Hans. I think that it will be the top-notch esports and everything else, yeah, sure, people still play using their desktops, but I do believe that mobile games will come to the forefront. Yes, Yaroslav. Well, I believe that both Hans and Mark, well, they're right and wrong at the same time. I think that it's wrong to equate the audience who are players and the esports overall. And we also have the viewership, right? Look at Formula One. Formula One is #3 a tournament, so when it comes to the size of the audience, but I'm pretty sure none of us own a race car, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately in Russia, look at our roads, but whatever. So if we don't play, it doesn't mean that we will not watch. And what Mark said, that he can be on the beach and somebody can be playing from Moscow and it can all be broadcast somewhere, but that is not esports. It's just a game. I think that these large offline events will not disappear, and the tournaments organized not on mobile platforms will also not disappear. Not everybody has access to extremely powerful desktops, but it doesn't mean that people will not watch this game, will not watch this tournament. Thank you very much for your answer, Yaroslav. Well, you know, I actually read an article that Europe is going to organize a World of Tanks tournament. Do you think it's possible that Russia will be the first country that will organize this event or will take this niche? Would you like to answer? Well, I will not speak about World of Tanks, but I think that mobile games tournaments, they are being organized.
Мало следит, правда, за
Well, as a person who is not closely watching the segment of mobile games, and this is the first time I find out that there is a tournament in mobile games, is it taking place in Russia? Not in Russia, no. But the first one was played at Vainglory, and the tournament took place in the 3x3 format. And I'm not sure if they played on their smartphones or tablet computers. I think tablet computers, and it was in 2017. And to me, it didn't look right. But I think that the future belongs to this segment. So if, let's say, we participate in a tournament, it's not, let's say, Cybersport. It is Cybersports. If we play Hearthstone casually, it's not sports. But if we compete with each other to achieve a particular result or to make our way to the World Cup, it is sports. It is esports. So now it may be difficult to think that, or maybe difficult to imagine that in 5 years from now, we won't have desktop computers, but tablet computers, and people will be playing all these games just with a flick of their fingers. But it's the same as starting to play Uncharted on a PlayStation with a joystick. But after a couple of hours, you understand it's okay. After we get games which are fit for tablet computers, then I don't think that playing mobile, it is on a tablet computer, it will be difficult to show the same performance as is possible on a desktop computer in Dota in a mouse. But the more people we have in this segment, the more gamers we have, the more potential it has for esports. Thank you so much. And I think we need to draw to a close. We may have a detailed conversation later, but now I'd like to give a floor to Evgeny, or I'd like to give a floor to Arthur Gaziev, Head of Computer Technologies Department from Electronic Moscow. So why state body is interested in this? So what kind of support measures do you plan? Let me add a comment to the previous discussion, because I think that mobile games have their own audience. And these gamers, they come to large arenas. But remember, when we used to watch chess games, so they were broadcasted on TV. And the main thing can be done about the mobile games. But I'd rather come to an arena and watch a Counter-Strike tournament or Dota tournament. So, but it doesn't change the situation. We can sell it electronically, or we can sell it through the arena. Now, when it comes to the city and what the city has to do to foster cybersport development, there are operators of infrastructure facilities. There are game organizers. Here we have also people from the esports federation from in Europe, and we all have the same task. We need to convert esports into something spectacular. We have the same task. We need to provide an opportunity to the city dwellers to participate in these esports events. Oh, it's not just about saying esports is fun. Please come and take a look. Esports is not just about shooters, because it's a common opinion that esports is about playing shooters, but it is also about strategy. It's about decision-making tactics. It's about developing your skills. So esports fosters personal development. After we have that, we come to the infrastructural bit. So we have, let's say, we have to build 20 arenas. Okay, who are going to use these arenas? How are we planning to utilize that? Even if we take people from the street to play there, okay, let's say we can build these facilities. We'll be spending public money for maintaining it, but it will be no use. If we rather focus on the spectacular side of things, so we'll be selling impressions and entertainment. So we'll be preparing people, we'll be coaching teams, we'll be preparing individual sportsmen. And finally, people will be ready to watch the broadcasting, or watch it in a Twitch, or come to the arena and watch it personally. And the role of the city is about regulating it carefully, is about listening to what all sides have to say, and listening carefully to the gamers, to the publishers, to the business. I'm very delighted to hear that the city authorities are watching these trends. Well, it is impossible not to see it, because it's one of the buzz subjects, because we cannot keep silent. You are saying that all of a sudden the state has paid attention to this. It didn't happen all of a sudden, and it didn't happen out of the blue. We've been watching it very carefully, especially you. Okay, it was nice to hear that the state has been involved into these projects for a long time, so we expect to hear good news. And Evgeny, now we come to you. Well, talking about mobile games, in January we participated in organizing a game for Newzoo.ru portal. That was a tournament between school teams, and as strange as it seems, Gloria, as a mobile application, turned out to be very popular with school kids, school students. So it is already there. It's still not relevant for our generation, but for the future generation, it will be as natural as gaming is for us. As far as the city infrastructure is concerned and how esports should be integrated into city infrastructure, let's say there are two types of esports. One is, let's say, mass segment, and another one is the one in which publishers or advertisers are mostly interested in. If we talk about the mass segment, then we can see this trend. So HR department set up esports tournaments among their people, among their employees, in order to develop certain skills in them. I think it's a great trend. And we have two projects, and one of these projects is on a federal level, being run by a big company which employs several thousand people. So this trend is there. So as far as infrastructure is concerned, to date we have 3 clubs in Moscow. One is Yota, another one is Cyberspace, and Gamer Stadium. No, it comes from the past, but okay. We all know about these clubs, and each of them has its benefits and has its shortfalls. And once a year, now they're hearing that in Sokolniki, one of the pavilions will be handed over to these clubs, to esportsmen, but nothing happened so far, and the story has been around for 5 years. But if we want to see it developed, we need to support its infrastructure, starting with, let's say, training, because we don't have enough good people in cybersports, on esports. When you talk about training, do you mean training the gaming skills or the management skills? I mean management skills. I mean training those people who will promote esports in 5 years from now. But we need these people now already. We need their enthusiasm, and because enthusiasts of the past, they've spotted some potential in cybersports. They have developed themselves and their own skills, and they are now working in this business. And I understand that there is one department for esports management in one of the Russian universities, but this is not the problem of esports, but it's a problem of the entire gaming industry in Russia. But I don't think they can be separated. You mentioned a very interesting thing regarding insufficient HR resources, and we can talk about it more. But before you carry on, I would like to ask our other speakers.
This is something you pointed out, which is very important for us in Germany too. We, as a federation, one of our first project right now is to find a standard for training in the most amateur level, to have a reliable training course that we can roll out all over Germany into local esports club. And that is the second thing. We have a lot of people, may it be on the beach, may it be at home at the computers, they are playing individually. But we are aiming to connect them in offline spaces, in clubs, in some sort of spaces that brings them together, and to create something they value. And that is most and foremost, it's training, it's developing themselves, and therefore create a community that is very strongly bound to the local city or to the local area they are coming from. And I think that it's a very, very important concept to bring this in, and to not only have a transparent structure going the road to pro, and to maybe to allow even to fail at that road, but being in a network of people that are also doing it, because the pro level is for most of people unreachable. Let's face it, it's just the nature of sports. But being in a amateur community that is training together, that is having a reliable coach or someone who guides them throughout this process to compete even on an amateur level, to compete against other cities, to compete worldwide. Of course, we are talking about esports nonetheless, but on a level that is right for their skill set. I think that is very important too, and that is what cities and governments should fund to have this large amateur base and to create a reliable environment for esports to prosper. And I think that will reflect well on another topic that will come up, and going back onto the topic of cybersports on stadium. It's we will see for the most top events, we will see a development that we know from sports itself, from traditional sports itself. We will have a application process for hosting those tournaments, and I think that might be like it's happening right now a bit, but it will be the future of hosting esports events. So cities have to think about, and nations have to think about how to apply and how to create a good environment so the next big tournament comes into my city and we create all the infrastructural possibilities that esport brings and brings to the table. And I think that is very important to have like a good amateur scene to support a pro esports moving into the city, coming as a guest into your nation or your city.
Огромное спасибо.
Thank you so much, Hans. It was a very important subject, and unfortunately we are pressed for time. And but however, it's a very interesting topic, and I'd love to talk more about it. Arthur, do you have anything to add? And Evgeny will finish our discussion. We don't have a lot of time left, Evgeny, but could you please let us know about the following thing? You are responsible for organizing esports events and esports tournaments. Is there great demand for the, let's say, for organizing these things? Do you see any growth in this area? Well, actually, I don't think that there is big growth there. Not that I could see it. It's probably 10% year on year as far as offline events are concerned. Online segment is overloaded. I agree, but there are certain natural restrictions to existing in the offline segment. But if we're talking about the city structure, again, any sort of a forum or a platform needs a content. So we need to have some events on a regular basis. We need to foster building of communities. Let's say if you go to the gym regularly, you look stronger. If you go to McDonald's regularly, you look a bit like me. And cybersports and esports is the same. Not only you need to have infrastructure, you need to add content to this infrastructure. You need to blend the content and infrastructure into the ecosystem, and then you will be competing for these large events. Thank you very much, Evgeny. And I think we have run out of time. I would like to thank our all speakers for the comments. I'd love to ask more questions, but unfortunately we had lots of fascinating subjects. Probably the next session we can get to the VR topic, and Arthur can talk about it endlessly. But please feel free to contact our speakers after the session. I would like to thank you for attending this session. I would like to thank the speakers and the spectators who are present here at the moment. And this session is over. Thank you very much.